game went very well till now and we have reached this end game. So now I played d2 in this move, d2 in this position, and he has to take bishop takes, queen takes, and now rook f1. So this is a very complex end game. Even though I have a queen, but he's having a pawn and rook, and he can set up a fortress now and draw the game. So what is a fortress? So basically he will bring his king over here, defend this pawn, and then keep his rook moving in these squares, and this fortress is very tough to break. So let's see what I played. So queen e3 check first, king comes to g2. So now we have to bring the king to help the queen. Queen alone can't win in this position. So rook f3 check, rook f2 check, king h3, king e4. So I am trying to bring my king on this side. Rook f4. As I said, he will just move and defend. So queen h1 check, king g4, and he will keep this structure very solid of king and pawn, just like a bind. So check, king here, rook. He will try to keep the rook around this pawn and king, and he will support the pawn always. So this is a fortress and it is very tough to break. So let's see. Check, king. So I am successful in bringing my king from here to here. So that's a good thing for black right now. So second thing I have to do is avoid checks. So rook g5 check, king, king to h6, and now you can see this square is held by my king as well as my queen. So rook cannot come here and give check. So rook f5. So somewhat I am successful in creating a space between king and rook. So check, king to g4, again a check, king to f4. So basically I dragged his king from this side to this side. So again a check, king goes. I want his king behind and rook ahead of the pawn to break the fortress, but he is not very easy opponent. So as you can see, he's very hard to defeat and he's trying pretty well. So now I'm bringing my king near my queen. Always try to bring king near your queen in such times, so as to help your queen break the fortress. So now what he does is he moves his pawn ahead, which is actually a weak move. I cannot say that he's completely lost, but it's a weak move because he's breaking the fortress by his own. So queen g2. I'm trying to keep the attack on this pawn constantly and waiting for his mistakes. So king comes ahead, giving a check, king g6, queen d8, rook f4. So as you can see, now I have been successful in creating gap between king and pawn. So the king and pawn bind is much stronger than this rook and pawn bind. So it's a good news for black. So check, king goes here, again a check, again a check, yes. So king g3. As I said before, I am successful in bringing his king behind the pawn, and look at my position. My queen and king are pretty well. So king e5. Now it's time to attack. So basically I will be constantly attacking his rook now. So he has to move the rook. So check, king moves up, rook here, queen f6, not to allow his king. Check, check, king comes to h5, queen h1 check. As you can see, it is very tough to break this fortress, queen h5, because he has promoted his pawn, but he has made this fortress now. So now I am attacking his pawn and he cannot defend it with king as my queen is holding. So either he has to move the pawn ahead or defend it with rook to g5. But rook to g5, then I have king f4 attacking his rook and the pawn will collapse. So g5, he has to promote it. Now queen g4, again attacking the rook. So whenever he's moving the pawn, he's weakening his fortress. So now his fortress would be rook, bringing the rook in this square and binding this king and pawn to hold me for a draw. Again, I'm taking this control over this diagonal. Now g6 is a move which has completely ruined the position for white. Now I have a plan, but it is very difficult to execute. The plan is, if I get my king all the way to g7 and my queen somewhere on this or this square, I will be able to win. But as you can see, this rook is holding very tightly and not allowing my king to transfer to near the pawn. So check, king g5. So there we go. I start my king run. So attacking this rook, he has to move the rook. Check, king comes down. So basically what I did, this rook was stopping my king from entering into the territory of pawn. So after the check, I came here, rook f7, queen to h3, check. So now I have made him compulsory to bring the rook here, and now this file is clear, so I can bring my king. But first of all, my queen is under attack. So let's give a check. King moves, check, rook, check, queen. First block the pawn, check again. Now I have brought my king. So I am able to break this bond between king and pawn, and my king is attacking this rook and pawn. Simultaneously, I have many things to be happy. So king g7, king f4, queen to d4 check, king f5. So this is all technique. This is all a part of technique. It was very difficult, as you can see. So as I mentioned earlier, after this check, see, now I am able to bring my king. I have fixed this pawn movement, and now, as I said before, I will occupy these both square and this position will be completely winning for black. So this is a complete win. Now see how I convert. Queen to f2. I have successfully created a gap between king and other pieces. So now a check. He has to defend, otherwise I will take the rook if his king moves elsewhere. Queen d4. Now my plan is simply bringing my queen to f6. So attacks, check. Now as you can see, king and pawn bond is broken once again. Rook is also idle. So as you can see, there is no coordination between the pieces of white, and I am successfully achieving my all targets of bringing the king and blocking the pawn. And now another target will be successful, that is queen f3 attacking the rook. So if his rook moves elsewhere, I will simply take this pawn and that will be completely winning. So rook g5, he will always try to hold to his pawn. But now queen f6 check, and there is no way to defend this rook. If the king moves anywhere, then I will take the rook. For example, if king moves here, then I will simply take the rook, and it's completely winning. So this was all for today, and I hope you like the technique of winning in an endgame, which is very complex. So thanks for watching this video, and subscribe if you want more content, if you like our content. Thank you for watching.